Alright, good morning everybody. It's about It's about 11:15 Monday morning, August, I believe, 8th now, 2011. And I want to talk about something. You know, last night I was watching the Select Daddy's review of Hardcore Justice, and one of the things he talked about at the beginning and at the end of the review was how can a pay-per-view called Hardcore Justice be hardcore when there's not even any hardcore in it. He said the closest that we got to hardcore was a table spot and a 6-man tag, and that was it. So how can it be hardcore if there's no hardcore? And to me, I think this is TNA again dropping the ball. I mean, I know TNA is trying the best to, become better than what they were. They're trying to get up to that level, which everybody feels they have the potential to get to, and be on that same platform as maybe the WWE, but yet they're making mistakes along the way. And this mistake is called false advertising. Because basically, you have people shelving out $39.95, basically $40 if you will, shelving out that to watch this pay-per-view, if you will, to watch this pay-per-view, expecting to see hardcore matches, and yet they don't get it. I mean, if I was TNA and I knew this was going to be what my pay-per-view was going to be like, I would have just dubbed it Hard Justice instead of Hardcore. Because like I said, that's false advertising. That's like saying, oh, you go see a movie in the theaters and the movie's going to have these scenes and this scene and people saying this and people saying that. And when you go see the movie, they don't have any of the things they advertised or talked about, and you find out that you've been duped. Again, TNA, I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to give them credit, I know they didn't mean to falsely advertise a pay-per-view, but this is what happens when you have maybe one or two people focusing on too many things. You need to focus on one thing at a time and get it done. And by falsely advertising a pay-per-view, by saying it's Hardcore Justice, and basically having all these vignettes and promos and commercials depicting the fact that it's going to be a hardcore pay-per-view, violent pay-per-view, you don't see any of it. You don't see any of that, which is basically a lie. I mean, give WWE credit. WWE at least goes out of the way when they do Extreme Rules. Yeah, it's a gimmicky pay-per-view, and all the matches may just be one match related to hardcore, but give them credit. At least they go out and do a hardcore-like pay-per-view, and they do showcase hardcore-like matches. So why couldn't TNA? Why couldn't TNA do the same thing? Because again, they're not focusing on what needs to be focused on. They're focusing on a million other things, and yet they're not focusing on the fact that they need to keep the pay-per-views truthfully advertised and not falsely advertised. Now, speaking of the pay-per-views, one of the things that Select Daddy also talked about in his review, and everybody's talked about this, I'm pretty sure of, is that TNA needs to start getting the pay-per-views out of the impact zone and into the arenas. Now, I agree totally with this, because he said last night's attendance for Hardcore Justice last night's attendance for Hardcore Justice, the audience there was dead. It's like you could hear a cricket in that audience, it was so dead. And he said that's because most of that audience is amusement park people just going in to see a show that's part of the amusement park. You know, and I agree on that. But there have been occasions where it's kind of been 50-50, and sometimes 25-75 or 75-25 when it comes to what kind of audience you're getting there. But yeah, even with that, even with those percentage numbers, still you need to get your pay-per-views out of the impact zone and into arenas around the country. Now, some people will say, and even those in TNA would probably say, well, the reason we don't do this is because it's financial reasons. We want to save money. Hey, maybe that's the Carter's reason. Maybe the Carter's, that's their reasoning, saying, hey, we would like to do it, but right now this is more affordable for us. Every now and then we might go out, but right now this is more affordable. Okay, I can understand that. But how you expect to expand more so if you don't take your pay-per-views every month out of the impact zone? How do you expect to do that? I mean, you're taking the right step with your impact show by taking it out of the impact zone and taking it to places like Macon, Georgia and Norfolk, which are, not big arenas, the Scope and the Coliseum, but still they're big enough to have an average size, not a sellout, but average half capacity size, and I mean half capacity size attendance for Impact Wrestling. I'll give it that. But this needs to keep going, not just once a month, every month. It needs to happen. Same with the pay-per-views. Needs to happen. I mean, I'll tell you this. If they want to save money, but they want to make it look like they could sell out arenas, focus on the small arenas, on the small venues, on the medium-sized venues. I was watching Monday Night Raw, a classic Monday Night Raw match from Worcester, Massachusetts, back around 96, 97, and they were in a small arena that you could dub is an ECW/TNA arena. That's how small it was. And if WWE back then could do something like that financially, then why can't TNA? Huh? Why can't they go to a small auditorium in Worcester, Massachusetts, or that small auditorium in Stockton, California? Why can't they do that? Because if they do that, that would help them make it look like it's beyond capacity. And that people love TNA. I mean, take it from me, a small arena, small or medium-sized arena sold out makes it sound like a huge arena that's sold out. And financially, it would be best for them to do that not just for Impact Wrestling, but to do that for the pay-per-views. I mean, they're taking Bound for Glory on the road to Philadelphia to the University of Temple. And that arena is the right size for them. But what I'm saying, folks, and I'm trying to be unbiased about this, but what I'm saying is that TNA needs to really start focusing, like Schleg Daddy has said, like many people have said, on trying to get TNA, trying to get Impact Wrestling on the road, showcase it, tape it, if you will, at smaller arenas. On occasion, I mean, yeah, on occasions, keep going to the big city arenas if you want to and all that. That's fine. Make your presence known in those venues, in those areas. But if you really want to sell out places, go to the smaller venues or the medium-sized venues in those cities, or on the outskirts of those cities, or in smaller towns or medium-sized towns, and you will financially succeed. It's the truth. Do that with Impact Wrestling, do that with your pay-per-views, and you will succeed. I mean, I know some people may not agree on that, but it's the truth. It's the truth. You know it, and I know it. So, this is something that TNA needs to work on. And financially, if they decide, hey, let's do Impact Wrestling and let's do some pay-per-views in these smaller venues or medium-sized venues in the big cities or on the outskirts of the big cities or in these other towns, financially, not only would it help that town, it would financially help Impact Wrestling. And that's the truth. That's the truth, my friend. It would financially help Impact Wrestling. And I'm not lying either. I'm not lying. I know this. I feel it as a fan and as a smart that I feel this is the right thing for them to do. I mean, when they did the US Bank Arena earlier this year, I understand that, they're not the lowest. They're not, I understand that they're not the only promotion out there that's had low attendance for a pay-per-view in that arena. WWE's had it years before them. But even WCW in its last year when they had one of the pay-per-views there, nearly sold that place out. WWE with SmackDown and Raw nearly sold the US Bank Arena out. But yet, Taboo Tuesday only did like 7,000 to 8,000 people. In Lockdown does 4,000 to 5,000. Hello? If you want to make an event like Lockdown and Bound for Glory and Slammiversary feel big, go to the medium-sized to smaller-sized venues in the big cities or on the outskirts, like I said, and that'll make them feel big. Same with Impact Wrestling. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I know by taking them to the outskirts, taking them to these big city venues and big city arenas, yeah, you want to make your presence felt and you want to make an impact, so to speak. And that's good. But if you really want to financially help yourselves and help the places that you go to, the smaller venues, the medium-sized venues in the big cities, or even in the smaller to medium-sized towns is the best option. Because believe me, from experience, you sell out an 8,000 seat or 10,000 seat arena with people, and it's going to sound like, and they're kicking and screaming and all that and enjoying the show. It's going to sound like it's a sold out 15 to 20,000 seat arena. That's what it'll sound like. But, that's just my take on it. That's just my take on what Schleg Daddy had to say about Hardcore Justice and how I feel about it being falsely advertised because there was no hardcore, and also on what Schleg Daddy had to say on the fact that they need to get the pay-per-views and Impact Wrestling out of the Impact Zone and on the road. So, comment down below, tell me what you guys think. Do you agree with me or not on a lot of this? And I will talk to y'all later.